I have always wanted to get into a Castlevania game or a Metroid game, and I just never have. I've tried the genre a few times, and I've always found myself just getting lost easily, getting too frustrated about being lost, not having fun backtracking, trying to figure out where to go, and inevitably shuffling off onto some other game before ever getting all that deep into any one of these titles. A little while back, I was watching a Good Vibes Gaming charity stream in which two of the hosts were playing a Castlevania game side by side and racing to see who could finish the game first. And I think you could like donate to add hindrances to either side. And I was only there for like the very tail end of that stream, but I remember watching it and just going, man, I really want to play a Castlevania game. This was years ago, it still took me years to get here, but I mentioned that because a similar thing happened with Doom. I remember back when I was like 19 or 20, I watched someone speedrunning the original Doom, and I was like, I kind of want to play this game even though it's super old, and I ended up loving it, and it's like the same kind of a story here. So after numerous false starts over the years, I have finally started and completed a Castlevania game, and that is Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance, which is not one of the more revered titles in the series, but I had such a good time with it. And maybe it's a good thing that I was able to play this game first before any other Castlevania game, because surely a lot of what I love about this entry is just the stuff that's present in all of the later Castlevania games. I have actually dabbled with Castlevania 1 on NES, so I know not all of them, but you know what I mean, like the Metroidvania experience. During the most recent Steam sale, everything went on sale, but Castlevania Advance Collection was one of those games, and it went for a very reasonable price, and I found myself looking at it and going, you know what, fine. You know how I just said I played Castlevania NES? That was the original Castlevania collection. I bought that back on Xbox some years ago, and I remember when I was playing it, I was like, oh, like clearly I didn't do my research. I was going, this doesn't have the stuff that I was looking for, even though it was still kind of interesting to play. I don't think I ever got that far through it, but I abused rewinds and stuff in order to get anywhere in that game. But this game, I quickly realized, did have the stuff that I was looking for. It is, as it turns out, so satisfying playing through this game where you're running through various rooms and you are just filling out this map of areas that you've been to, and you come up against doors that you can't open, walls that you can't break through, stuff like that. And as you fight through the castle, you level up, you find items, you become more powerful. Suddenly the enemies which were giving you a hard time early in the game do 1 damage to you, and you can kill them in like a single hit, and just that progression feels so rewarding. I know, a lot of this video is going to be bro discovered Metroidvanias, bear with me. It wasn't just that though, it was the presentation of the game, you know. I love a gothic castle, I love everything about the general aesthetic of Castlevania, and just like escaping this giant spooky castle, and all its various different areas and elements, and so cool. I loved the enemy variety, like it's not just skeletons all the way down. Like, there's lots of different types of skeletons, but there's also like griffins which attack you, there's like witches, there's all sorts of spooky ghouls and gremlins. And I actually really do like the movement and the combat in this game. It's very rudimentary, it's very simple, but at the same time it's very like precise. You have to be very intentional with how you jump and move, but not quite as precise as you need to be on like the NES game. And just the basic fundamental combat of like making sure that you're not stepping within range of an enemy attack, or you're dodging ranged enemy attacks, and you know that you've got this range for your whip to hit them with. It's just so fun to engage with. And then you can like, here's the one thing I don't understand about this game. Like, you can pick up various items, and those items have different effects. However, you can also use, fairly early on, you get a spell book, and that kind of replaces the item's effect with a different spell based on the item that you pick up. But items remain a thing throughout the entirety of the game, but I do not feel incentivized to use an item instead of a spell throughout like 95% of the game. And yet, you know, towards the latter stages of the game, I was picking up items which would enhance one of those items' capabilities, or I guess the damage it would deal, like the holy water and stuff like that. But I just found the spells to be too useful that I never bothered switching off of them. So maybe I would have liked a separate button for throwing the item as well as being able to cast a spell, instead of having to toggle it on or off in the settings, because I ain't ever gonna go into the settings and toggle off spells. Now, the particular gimmick of this Castlevania game, I understand that this isn't true for most Castlevania games, but this game has two castles. One is an inverse of the other. It doesn't take too long before you eventually reach a room. I guess it does take a little while, but you probably about 40% of the way through the game, I would guess, you reach a room which allows you to shift to the castle that you're already in, mostly the same structurally speaking, but it's got different enemies, it's got a different skybox, it's got a different colour palette, it's got different furniture in the room, and yeah, I found that to be quite fun and effective to be like, oh wait, no, this was here in this other area of the castle, or this other version of the castle, but now I need to go back and switch back to make sure that I can get past it, you know what I mean? Initially it was kind of frustrating, because like, you only start with like one teleporter, let's just call them teleporters. You only start with one teleporter room, so there might be something you need and it's in the other version of a castle and you have to go all the way back and shift through again, but it wasn't too non-linear in that way. There wasn't too much backtracking, and you do eventually unlock other teleporters. Now, remember when I said I usually fall off of a Castlevania game or a Metroidvania game because I find myself feeling lost and not knowing where to go, and I quickly get frustrated and bored of all the backtracking to try and figure out where I need to go next? Well, this time I saw that coming. I was looking out for that problem because I really did want to get into this series and this genre, and so the second that hit, I stopped, I downed tools, I went away and I researched. I looked up a map, I looked up a guide, and let me tell you, that might sound like I'm going away and cheating. I know video game discourse in 2025, especially with Silksong and stuff, there are people who think you haven't really beaten the game if you've used a guide or if you've, used any of the save state features and stuff like that. For me, it was look it up or walk away from the game and never touch it again, so who cares? And I actually found researching where I was in the game and just like figuring out how to tell the search engine, like, I'm here and I need, because you don't know what you need to do to continue, right? You just know that you've looked everywhere and nothing's working out. So how do you look that up and figure out where you are in someone's game guide and so on and so forth? That actually was a compelling experience in and of itself. It felt like a puzzle to solve, and it was a puzzle to solve, maybe not in a way that the developers strictly intended, but also this was back in a day when you had game manuals, and I don't know what was in this game's game manual. Maybe there would have been something that would have helped me, but this felt like a similar thing of just going away, hitting the books, as it were, and figuring out what I needed to do next, what I was missing, where I needed to go. It felt like part of the gameplay experience instead of something extraneous. As for save states and cheat codes and stuff, first of all, I didn't find myself save stating very much because, and I never see this mentioned in any of the reviews, but Castlevania Advance Collection has a critical bug in it where sometimes when you quick save using the emulation quick save features, the game just crashes and it doesn't save, and this screwed me over twice. And once it was very early on in the game, and another time it was after I beat a boss. None of the bosses in this game are too hard, so it wasn't too much of a big deal, but it was frustrating. So I ended up just relying on the game's internal save system instead of the emulation stuff. That being said, the emulator also features a rewind system, and I was using it sparingly when, there were a couple of boss fights where I was like, oh, I died, I'll just quickly rewind and attempt that again. And I didn't see that as like cheating or like robbing myself of a challenge. However, as the game got further on, I did kind of try and consciously make sure that like, okay, I want to do this without rewinding. I'm not gonna tell myself I can't rewind, but for instance, there's a puzzle room in the bottom right of the map where you have to race the clock basically to get from one end to the other, and on the B castle variant of it, or maybe the A castle, I don't remember which way around it was, I was having a bit of a hard time, but I made myself have a few attempts without rewinding when I made errors, just so that I could be like, okay, like clearly I need like a handicap kind of thing. Basically, I'm not taking this too seriously. I'm not taking this as some kind of, I didn't beat the game unless I did it without using the rewind. Who cares? I had fun, and that's the main thing. And for me, it's mostly about just getting to play through the game and see it for myself. And if I hit any difficulty walls that are going to stop me, that is going to hinder my experience in that regard. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to prove anything to anyone or to myself. I'm just here to have a good time. But ultimately, this game wasn't too difficult. I didn't actually end up rewinding that much. Sometimes it would be like, there was an underwater section and I thought I might be able to power through it with healing items and stuff, and then I realised I hadn't saved for ages when I died, so I rewound all the way back to the beginning of that, or as far back as I could, because otherwise I would have screwed myself over royally. It's just nice to be able to fix little errors like that, because those are the sorts of things which would frustrate me to the point of probably putting the game down, walking away from it for a while, and then when I'm considering about playing it again, there's that little thing in the back of my brain going, then I have to deal with that thing, and it's like, then I might choose something else to play, and then it falls further down the pile, and then I have inevitably bounced off the game. But yeah, the main thing is, I don't think I used the emulation boons, the emulation rewinds, all that much in terms of like giving myself too much of a leg up. But again, I don't think this was a very challenging game. I think it was a nice difficulty actually, like it wasn't too challenging, but at the same time it felt like I was making progress and I was accomplishing things. I just want to point out the music in this game too, because I've looked up the soundtracks and I've seen people in the comments saying it's an underrated soundtrack. I'm guessing it's kind of just an underrated game in general in terms of the history of the series. But yeah, not every track is a banger, but I grew to really love the soundtrack to this game, and I think a lot of those tracks are going to live on in my head for a while. They are very GBA, keep that in mind. We don't have the highest quality audio here, but there's some tunes in there. Also, graphically speaking, there is just something so charming about a GBA game sometimes, and there were some parts where there was some like almost 3D effects with the pixel work, where I don't know if it was just like illusory 3D or if they actually had some very minor 3D elements, like some of the backgrounds. I'm thinking of like when you get to the top of the tower and you're going up the stairs and you see the outside. There's like a slight parallaxing effect to a tower in the background there. And honestly, that's kind of surprising for a Game Boy Advance game. Like, it kind of looked like a DS game in some respects. And by the way, I did pick up the Dominus Collection as well. But yeah, I don't think there's too much else I can really say about this game other than it was just a really, really good time. And it has, I don't know, so I guess one thing I can say, I wasn't sure if I was going to say it because I don't know how to make it make sense. But in a way that doesn't have anything to do with like tangible gameplay comparisons or anything like that. Playing through this game reminded me of playing through the Ratchet and Clank games. They are completely different kettles of fish, I know, but what I mean is, when I think of video games, this is kind of like the type of game that I think of, where you've got, maybe not levels, but you've definitely got like a progression, you've got like you're getting stronger, earlier enemies become easy to kill when you revisit them later in the game, you know, you get upgrades, it's an action-based game and you have to make sure you're not taking too many hits and stuff like that. It just scratches that itch in a way that I definitely was not expecting it to. I wasn't expecting to be comparing Castlevania to Ratchet and Clank of all things. For anyone who doesn't know me and thinks this comparison is really out of left field, Ratchet and Clank is one of my favourite game series of all time, so it's usually somewhere in the back of my mind. And honestly, I'm just kind of really excited to get stuck into Aria of Sorrow. I did have a misfire with Circle of the Moon when I first booted up Advanced Collection. Actually, that is where I first ran into the quick save bug, and I think I lost like 20-25 minutes of progress, and I was just like, no, not doing that again. But that was also just because Circle of the Moon, I don't know how it's regarded among the fans, but it reminded me of like the Castlevania 1 NES difficulty, and that is like not what I was there for. I picked up this Advanced Collection in the hopes of finding Harmony of Dissonance, you know, the game that actually turned out to be. And I'm sure Aria of Sorrow is probably, you know, gonna be better. I don't know if I'll make a reaction or like a discussion video about that after I've played it. This is mostly just because I'm finishing a Castlevania game for the first time, but I will inevitably talk about it somewhere, like in a weekly waypoint or something. But yeah, this is an experience I've been after for so long, and I finally satiated it, and there's so much more of it for me to go find. I don't just want to play Aria of Sorrow, I don't just want to play the Dominus Collection, I want to go on NSO and play through some of the Metroid games, because I definitely didn't give them the time of day that I should have done. I did pick up Metroid Prime not too long ago, and I was enjoying that, so I should get back to that as well. But anyway, thanks for coming and listening to my ramble about me finishing a Castlevania game for the first time. Let me know what's your favourite Castlevania game, if you like. Is there Is it weird that this was my first one? I feel like Harmony of Dissonance isn't many people's first Castlevania game. Do you think that affected my outlook on the game? And if I had played it later after playing lots of previous better Castlevania titles, do you think I would be looking upon it less favourably? I'm kind of anticipating playing through Aria of Sorrow and going, oh, this game does everything that game did but way better. But for now, I love this one. Alright, I'm talking in circles. I'm gonna go now. Thanks for checking us out. I'll catch you in whatever I make next.